There's a health condition that affects millions of people, but it does its work in complete silence. It just hangs out in the background of our busy lives, totally unnoticed, until things get serious. We're talking about high blood pressure. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out why we really need to pay attention to that silence.
So I'm sure you've heard it called the silent killer. I mean, it's a pretty intense nickname, right? But there's a very real and very important reason it earned that reputation. So let's get right into it. Why is it so silent?
And this is exactly why it's so sneaky. You see people just living their lives, working, walking, spending time with family. Everything looks completely normal on the surface. But that's the whole point. The danger isn't about how you feel, because most of the time there are no obvious symptoms at all. It's often found completely by accident, maybe during a routine checkup for something else. That's what makes it silent.
And get this, the so-called warning signs? Well, most of the time, there are none. Zero. And even when there are, look at this list. Headaches, mild dizziness, feeling tired. I mean, who hasn't felt like that after a long week or not enough coffee? It's so easy to just brush it off. And that's the trap. We dismiss the very things that could be a tiny signal from our body.
Okay, so if you can't always trust how you feel, what can you trust? The numbers. The numbers don't lie. So let's dive into our first section here, decoding the numbers. Because honestly, understanding what they mean is the absolute first step to taking back control. All right, so every reading gives you two key numbers. The top one, that's your systolic pressure. Think of it as the peak pressure when your heart is actually pumping, in mid-beat. The bottom number is diastolic. That's the pressure when your heart is resting between beats. It's kind of like your baseline. For example, a normal reading would be somewhere around 120/80.
I love this visual because it makes it so easy to understand. It's basically a traffic light for your health. Green means you're in the normal zone, all good. Yellow is that warning light. You're a little high, time to start paying attention. But red is the stop sign. That's considered high, and it's a clear signal that you need to take action.
And here's something we all need to keep in mind. As we get older, our risk naturally goes up a bit. That's why, after age 40, getting regular checks becomes totally non-negotiable. Seriously. Even if you've always been in that green zone, you've got to keep an eye on it to stay there.
So that brings us to the next big questions, right? What causes this in the first place, and what are the real dangers if you just let it go? Let's break down the risk factors and what's really at stake here.
When you look at the risk factors, they kind of fall into two buckets. First, you've got the stuff you can't really change, like getting older or your family history. But then you have all these factors that you absolutely can influence. Eating too much salt, not getting enough exercise, smoking, and of course, chronic stress and anxiety. These are the levers you can actually pull.
Let's just pause on stress for a second, because I feel like this one gets overlooked all the time. Your mental state, feeling angry, anxious, worried, it can physically raise your blood pressure, even if you don't feel a thing in your body. It's such a powerful reminder that the connection between our minds and our bodies is a very real, physical thing.
Okay, so what's the actual end game here? What really happens if this silent pressure just keeps going unchecked for years and years? This question really gets to the heart of why this matters. It's not about one bad reading, it's about the damage that adds up over time.
Well, here's the answer. The best way to think about it is to imagine your blood vessels are like the plumbing system in your house. High blood pressure is like cranking up the water pressure way too high and just leaving it like that 24/7. Over time, that constant force starts to damage and weaken the pipes, and that's a huge problem for everything those pipes supply. And that damage doesn't just happen anywhere. It targets the VIPs, our most vital organs. It puts a huge strain on the heart. It can lead to a stroke in the brain. It can even damage the super delicate blood vessels in our eyes and harm our kidneys, which are our body's filter. So, yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
Okay, I know that last part was a bit heavy, but here's the really, really good news. This story does not have to end that way. Not at all. This is a manageable condition. So now let's flip the script and focus on the positive, actionable things you can do on your path to wellness.
See, it's not about one giant, impossible change. It's about a series of small, totally achievable steps. This path lays it out perfectly. It starts with eating well and just getting out for a daily walk. Then simple things like cutting back on salt and making sure you get enough sleep. And finally, the cornerstone, checking in with your doctor and sticking with the plan. It all works together.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. Treatment is an integrated lifestyle, not just medication.
A pill can definitely help, but real, lasting change comes when it's part of a bigger commitment to your health. It's all about the small choices you make day in and day out.
Which brings us right back to the beginning and to the simplest, most powerful action you can take. You have to know your numbers. You can't fix what you don't measure, right? The message here is as clear as it gets. Check your pressure. Be sure about your health. It's the first step to everything else.
When you really boil it all down, it comes to this simple but powerful equation. Early detection equals protecting your life. By catching it early, you give yourself the incredible power to stop all that long-term damage before it even starts. It's really the ultimate form of looking out for yourself.
So we're going to leave you with this one last question. And it's not just something to think about, it's a real call to action. When was the last time you actually checked your blood pressure? If you can't remember, maybe today's the day to get an answer.